The information provided by Trading Forex Price Action to you does not constitute personal financial advice. The information provided is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation, or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice.
Midweek Analysis.
Hey guys, this is the midweek analysis for April 28th of 2021. Okay, we'll start off with the Aussie-NZD pair. This is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, so we had a normal double bottom right here against a weak downward trend line right here to this pivot. And so in the long term, we were long biased right up to this trend line level right here as the first target, and possibly this second target right up here at this pivot high. However, since there is a lot of momentum down at this point right now, and since we only want trades along with our long-term bias for this currency pair, in the short term, we are neutral biased. Okay, let's talk midweek price. Okay, this is a daily chart. Let's go ahead and review what happened for the past 2 months. Okay, so on this candle right here, our first target at that monthly trend line was hit. And then price tried to push through that downward trend line and get to our second target, however failed. And price came right back down. And at this point, price tried to make another long to get through that monthly trend line. However, this one failed also. And then we were talking about how if price even reaches this pivot low level right here, there's a very high probability that price could pull down right back down to this pivot right here, and then furthermore to this pivot. Okay, and at this point, that seems to be the case. Now, this situation was further confirmed 2 days ago by this week long trade right here. Okay, so for the time being, everything does seem to be pointing down right down to this pivot first. Now at this point, since we only want long trades with the long-term trend on this currency pair, let me take you over to the weekly chart to show some possibilities of that. Alright, on this weekly chart, try drawing these trend lines from this pivot to this pivot right here. Another one from this pivot to this pivot. And finally, this pivot to this pivot. Now, one option to get that long trade to that monthly second target will be for price to fall back to one of these trend lines and start to make compact price action on these levels. Now that compact price action can be on the daily, 4-hour or 1-hour charts. However, just remember, in order to have compact price action, the distance between each peak must be extremely small. And the other option will be simply for a strong weekly long trade to form. Now, the reason why it has to be a weekly long trade and nothing under that time frame was because this long move was based on this long weekly long trade to begin with. Now, like I showed you earlier on the daily chart, those lower time frames price action is gradually showing that this weekly long trade already hit its target right here. So since the lower time frames at this moment is pointing price right back down to stop out the long traders that are still in this long move, and that stop loss level being this pivot low right here, in order to get an entry long right up to our long-term second target, we need a weekly strong long trade to form. Okay, so what we'll be looking for is one, to get compact price action on the lower time frames on these weekly trendline levels. That's one possibility. And the other is for a strong weekly long trade to form. Then possibly that'll take us up to our long-term second target. Okay, so let's go on to the dollar yen. Alright, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, so ultimately we're short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. But we were talking about the pullback all the way to 109 and then down to 101. So in the long term, we are still short biased right back down to this 101 level. However, since we're waiting for confirmation of waning long momentum, in the short term, we are neutral biased. Okay, let's talk midweek price. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Now, the first thing we wanted to see in terms of waning long momentum is for 2 red candles to form on the weekly chart. Now we wanted consecutive red candles on the weekly chart for this entire long move to begin with, was based on a weekly long trade right here. Okay, so we got that first confirmation 2 weeks ago. Let's go on to the next confirmation that we want. So let's go on to the monthly chart. All right, on this monthly chart, there was a breakout of this strong trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here last month, right here. Now, seeing that this downward trend line was very prominent and there was a breakout of it, I'm sure many are viewing a retest of this breakout for further confirmation long. But since we're looking for waning long momentum, what we want is for price to break back into this trend line and causing a failure of a breakout. Now, price broke back into this monthly trend line level on the daily and the weekly charts already. However, we ultimately want to see a break back in on this monthly chart. Okay, so that's the second confirmation of waning long momentum we're waiting for. Okay, so there was a daily long trade that formed today. So let's go over to the daily chart. All right, so on this daily chart, a long trade just formed today. Now, this long trade was rather strong. So if we're looking for waning short momentum, the first thing we want to see is for this strong long trade to get stopped out at this pivot low right here. Now, if price could come back and stop out this strong long trade at this pivot low, that will further confirm the waning long momentum. Now, let me explain why on the weekly chart. Okay, so like I explained earlier, this entire long move was based on a weekly long trade that formed right here. Now, when long trades already hit their target, which in this case was the 109 trendline level on the monthly chart that we've been talking about in past forecasts. So typically, when a target is hit, price often aggressively moves right back down to stop out those long traders that are still holding their long positions, and that stop loss level being this pivot low. So no matter how many strong long trades form on the lower time frames, for example that daily chart's long trade, if this weekly long trade's target is already hit, price should ignore the lower time strong long setups and stop those out too. Okay, so let me take you back to the daily chart. Okay, so another confirmation that we want for waning long momentum is for this strong long trade to get stopped out, for price to come right back down and hit this pivot low. Okay, so for the time being, let's just see if we could get that monthly break back in to that trend line, and furthermore, if price could come back and stop out this strong long trade. Okay, so let's go on to the euro dollar. Okay, this is the monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this price action right here was very strong short, and price still has a ways to go in this down move, in the long term, we are short biased right back down to this pivot low as a target. However, in the medium term, since there was a breakout of this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here, we are long biased right back up to this pivot high as a target. And in the short term, since there's a little bit of momentum short still left in this move, we are short biased right back down to this pivot right here. Okay, let's talk midweek price. This is a weekly chart, so we'll go over the setup we've been looking at for the past couple of months. So there was a strong short trade right here, then a week long trade formed here. So as price pulled back, we were short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. And then the same thing happened again. So another week long trade formed. So as price pulled back, we were short biased right back down to this new pivot low. Now 2 weeks ago, the same thing happened. Another week long trade formed right here. So as price pulls back, we're looking for short entries right back down to this pivot low as a target. All right, so some possible entries we could be looking for this short entry is right here from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. And price is at it right now. If we could get compact price action on the lower time frames like the daily or 4-hour charts on this price level, then that is one possible scenario that price could set up a short right back down to this pivot low as a target. However, just recall that this pullback long could be very deep before we could get a short entry right back down to this pivot low target. Okay, now let me explain to you why this pullback may be very deep. So let's go over to the daily chart. Okay, the last short trade that formed on this daily chart was right here. Now this daily short trade possibly already hit its target right here. Now when targets are hit, normally price just pulls right back to stop out the short traders that are still in this short trade right up here. So there is a possibility that price could pull back all the way back to these levels right here. But as long as price does not hit this pivot high right here, in the short term, I'm still short biased right back down to this level right here. Now the reason why I'm willing to take short entries as long as price does not reach this pivot high is because the last short weekly trade stop loss level is right here. Alright, so let me take you back to the weekly chart. Alright, so on this weekly chart, the last short trade that formed was right here. Now if you recall, the last daily short trade formed at this level right here, the one I just showed you. Now the target that the daily chart possibly already hit at this level is a gap on the monthly chart. So let me go ahead and show you that. Okay, on this monthly chart, this gap way back here, right here, is a strong support level if you're trading on the daily chart. However, for a short trade on the weekly chart, in my opinion, this gap is slightly not big enough to be a target. So for example, if this gap was say another 50% wider, then possibly I would have considered this monthly gap as a target for the weekly short trade. Now if you're having trouble understanding what I'm talking about in terms of big gaps and small gaps, please watch lesson 10 of my price action trading course and that'll clear that up for you. Okay, so let me take you back to the weekly chart to sum that up. Alright, so on this weekly chart, the last short trade that formed was right here, and the last daily short trade was at this price level right here. Now that monthly gap may be strong enough to be a target for a daily short trade, and that is why I was saying there could be a deep pullback on this move. However, to me, that monthly gap target was not big enough, thus strong enough to be a target for a weekly short trade. And that is why, as long as price does not come right back up here to the stop loss of this weekly short trade, I'll be looking for a short trade right back down to this pivot low as a target. Okay, so for the time being, let's just see if we could get that compact price action on this weekly trendline level we were talking about right here. Okay, so that's it for the midweek analysis. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, guys. And thanks for watching. Okay, bye.